I'm Luca Giliberti, contributing writer for Gold Derby, and I'm excited to talk about the fourth and final season of Ozark with Alfonso Herrera, who starred as Javi Alejandro. So Alfonso, I want to go back to the beginning and ask you what your first impression of Javi was when you read your audition slides, and how that impression changed once you really got to sink your teeth into the character.
Well, at the very beginning, it was very clear that he was part of the Navarro family. Obviously, this energy is very, it's like the counterpart in order to understand the bird energy, the objectives that the bird family has. And obviously there is an opposition to that. And Javier belongs to that world, belongs to that opposition that is not going to try and make Marty, Wendy fulfill their goals. That's like, in my perspective, like the main, the main vision of it. But once I was starting to create or to build this character, I understood, or I tried to see that he was a very lonely guy. He was a person that was rejected by his family, was rejected by his inner circle, his inner entourage of family. So in order for him to feel capable of, he created this shield of protection to prove himself and to prove the family that he is capable of doing major things.
That's very interesting, and we'll get into that later when we talk about his education a bit. But almost everyone I spoke to or have spoken to from the show, including casting director Alexa Alfogel, has highlighted how you were able to bring such a perfect mixture of menace and charm to the character. Is that something that you did with intention, or did those qualities just naturally arise out of your performance?
Well, that is the best compliment, and specifically coming from her, because she is the most sweet and best, one of the best persons I've met in this industry. I think that it has to do a lot with the tone of Ozark. Ozark doesn't allow you to push things in a how can I say this? I'm gonna go from Spanish to English. In an objective, there has many layers. Mm-hmm. So in order to achieve that, you don't have to push. And the tone of Ozark is very specific. And if you jump into that wave, many answers can be presented to you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and I think that Javi himself is aware of the effect he has on people when he enters a room, right? I mean, he seems like someone who is completely conscious of the menace and charm that he exudes, and then uses it to his advantage, wouldn't you say, in certain situations at least?
And also, I would like to add something to it, because he understands the position where he is, not just in his family, but also in the business. Mm-hmm. There is a point, and this is something that I constructed. There is a point where he enjoys making people uncomfortable. Every single time he enters a room, he makes people uncomfortable, and he knows that. So in order for him to enjoy that process, because you see him and there is nothing of Javier pushing that much. He just enjoys the present. He likes to have a glass of wine. He enjoys making Marty and Wendy uncomfortable. He knows it, and at the same time, he laughs about it.
Yeah, and I mean, he also loves to be very honest, doesn't he? I mean, when he tells the birds that he had voted to kill them, and then just follows that with a, no offense, I was like, wow. And that was straight away in the first episode. So, and
that is a characteristic that not necessarily is presented in villains, or seeing stories in a bidimensional way, villains. But Javi, well, he's very straightforward, and he's very truthful, and I understand that every single person is watching their backs in this show, but at the same time, in order for him to, when he communicates, he doesn't keep things for himself. He's like very straightforward.
Yeah, and I'd also read that you worked very closely with Chris Mundy, the showrunner, by really going beyond just the words on the page to build this character. So what were some of the specifics about Javi that you and Chris worked and decided on during that collaboration, maybe building on what you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, when I received the news that I was going to go to Atlanta and be part of the show, I talked to Chris, and he was incredible. He said, anything you need, any question, please call me, because he was at that point, he was in Atlanta and I was still in Mexico City, and we were waiting for paperwork in order for me to travel. But while I was talking to him, I said, well, I think that my first approach to this character is like, he's like a bastard son. Mm-hmm. He's like a bastard son to this, in this community, in this family. And he said, well, I think that is a very appropriate reading towards Javi. And from that on, we kept on talking. I promised him a bottle of tequila that I brought from Mexico, but every time I came to set, because of COVID protocols, I was not able to bring that. So Chris, I have a bottle of tequila. At some point, because I had that while I was quarantined in Atlanta. So Chris, I owe you a bottle of tequila, just for you to know.
You owe him. I spoke to him last week. I should have told him.
He's the best.
He's really amazing. And, I do think we get a tiny bit of backstory of Javi, in that we learned that he went to business school in Chicago and was mistreated by his professor. And he actually tells that professor in episode 8 that he was one of the most social people in his class. So how true do you think that is? And how do you think he was as a student in general?
I didn't consider that as a hint, at least for me. I didn't think that probably that is something that was very accurate into Javi's. I think that he said that just to make him know that he was wrong, even though probably that if he wasn't wrong, he just was trying to have control in that conversation. And I think it was just a tool in order for him to have power in that conversation.
Yeah, that's really interesting because, I'd read that, he's a very honest character, but in that scene, I was questioning myself, how true that was, because it didn't seem very true. So
no,
I think,
and especially if he is considering that probably he was being treated in a very specific way, probably he was not as, he didn't have those qualities. He just wanted to prove him wrong. And I don't think that he would remember if he was quiet or not. It was something in order for him to have the conversation.
That's very interesting. And, in that episode, he actually beats up the professor, which is one of countless acts of violence that he commits on this show. And I read that those scenes were very difficult for you to shoot. So talk about the process of embracing that violence is nevertheless very much a part of Javi's nature.
I think that there is a point where he fights it, but he always loses that battle, and he knows it. He knows it because he's not someone that arrives with a gun like that, or his first approach is not with aggression, and he likes to read people, and in order for him to understand what is going to be his next move. But yeah, violence is something that travels and that lives inside of Javi's head. It doesn't pop immediately, but he likes to read people in order to understand if that is going to occur.
And I think you really see that straight away in the first episode with the sheriff at the end. I think you really see how he reads not just him, but the entire situation first. And that's very...
And also when with the birds in the second episode, he arrives with the oyster scene. He measures Marty, and because Marty is impeccable lying, he doesn't fall. I mean, he falls in the lie from Marty, so he keeps going. So he likes to read people in order for him to take the second step, and that's it.
Yeah, and it's still very scary. And I think, the scariest part even is that murder doesn't seem to faze him all the time. I mean, that's a general trend on the show, but Javi seems to play it with a straight face very often when he murders someone. I don't know if that's something that you were going for, if something that was on the page, but that's the impression I got watching it, which just makes his character more menacing.
Yes, and it has to do also with the values that he has in his context. The value of killing someone versus ordering a bottle of wine, which enters into a psychopathic world, which could exist.
Oh, absolutely. And, I was also very fascinated by the dynamic between Javi and Omar, his uncle, of course, because these two kind of butt heads and engage in what appears to be a power struggle. So talk about working with Felix Solis and the sides we get to see of Javi during those interactions.
Omar is a very talented actor, a very kind and generous actor. And since day one, because one of my, no, I think it was not my first call, but it was one of my first days that I had the possibility to work with Omar. We both were talking about the relationship, and the relationship is they're trying to take care of this business and not give this energy that it's that specific business. It's a family business, and not trying to portray or to push that, oh yes, we are part of a huge cartel, etc. It's just something that belongs to the family and that we need to protect. And when you have that in mind, you, in my point of view, you take away all these unnecessary information that could transform on unnecessary nuances.
Yeah, and I really do believe that Javi is in a way more mercurial and more ruthless than Omar, though I do think he is certainly more impulsive at the same time, and that creates such an interesting contrast between the two characters, at least as a viewer. And then of course there's Javi's mother, Camila, played by Veronica Falcon, who I know was on the same set with you on Queen of the South. The only scene you really get to share on Ozark is a brief phone call in episode 8, but I think you get a good sense that they're very much of the same breed as the season goes on. So how much would you say that Javi is similar to his mother?
It's more than obvious. The character, the decisions that they both made. I mean, it's very clear what she makes at the very end of the last bit versus what Javier does in all the bits where he is part of Ozark. So there is a lot of similarity, and the result is there. The decisions that they both make are there, and they are very, very similar.
And were you able to speak to Veronica before? I know you didn't share any scenes, but were there any conversations about how that mother-son dynamic would still be present even though they weren't in scenes together? Or... Fun
fact, this is a fun fact. I was finishing my last scene. I was in the makeup trailer, and Veronica just arrived for her makeup test and for her fittings and all of that. And we had the possibility of saying hi and goodbye at the same time, that same day, when I was finishing Ozark. And wow. She's a lovely actress. I love her. And it's a privilege to share a project with her, even though we were not able to share set.
Right. And I'll say that Camila is very scary. She and I don't get scared easily, but what Veronica brought to that character is incredible.
Yes, and definitely.
And that's a perfect segue, because you talked about your last day, because we have to talk about Javi's death in episode 8, which really took people by surprise because it happened so soon. When I talked to Amanda Marsalis, who directed the episode, she praised you for being an extraordinary stuntman. So talk about shooting that scene.
Well, yeah, I did it. And it's something that we do. I mean, and it was fun doing that. What I really liked was the way that Amanda cut the scene, or didn't cut the scene, because it brought it catalyzed the shock. If you would have cut the scene in any way in that exact moment, you should have lost the rhythm. And I really loved what Amanda did in episode 8 and 9, because there are completely different episodes, and the rhythm of both episodes are just are impeccable. It has to do with the director's feeling, the director's gut. And I mean, I remember when we were shooting My Death, we were doing the rehearsal, and I did it. Mm-hmm. And she was like, perfect, just try to land a little bit camera left, just a tiny bit. And I said, oh, okay, perfect. And we did it basically in 3 takes. And also the previous scenes of when Ruth was dreaming, we also did that in the street. And it was fun. It was a fun thing to do. I like doing stunts. I like doing that type of stunts, not crazy Tom Cruise stuff. No.
Not crazy stunts, but it is an incredible episode, and it is very stylistically different, which everyone I've spoken to has highlighted so far. And I think, like you said, the way she shoots it, it's from it's a wider shot, and it's pretty much a static shot. There, as you said, are not many cuts, and it just adds to the shock value, I think. And I believe that you got to watch the episode with a crowd at a screening in New York. So what was that experience like?
I loved it. I love that how the crowd hated Javi. It was the best compliment ever. When he died, I mean, all the crowd erupted. It was like, yes, finally. And I loved it. It's like when you create that connection with the audience, that's something that type of experiences, you cannot recreate that. That is something that I will always remember as something important.
Well, that's a great bookend to your Ozark journey. And, I read that when part 2 premiered, which was at the end of April, you have not yet watched beyond episode 10. So have you gotten the chance to finish the season?
I have to be very honest. I haven't.
Okay.
I haven't. I am right now. I know the story. I know because I read the whole thing. And but right now I am in the middle of shooting. So it has been a bit difficult, but it is something that is on my checking.
on your to-do list. But like you said, you've read the ending, so you know what happens. So what did you, as a longtime fan of the show yourself, think about how everything came together ultimately?
I like the ambiguity at the very, very end, the last scene, like. And it's incredible how Chris Mundy and all the writers' room, they let the audience decide, and it's making them part of this process, of this show. So kudos to them. And it's what Julia Garner did in this show is not just for this show. It has to do with the history of TV. It is something incredible, and it was also amazing to share set with her, even though she was just shooting me. And we talked behind the scenes. It was like, oh, Alfonso, I would have loved to have a scene with you, just to talk a little bit more. And I was like, yeah, of course, not just shooting a gun. But I mean, it was a very powerful ending in my point of view.
Right. I completely agree. I love the ambiguity. I think it makes such an interesting ending. And, it's created debate. And I think debate is always positive. And
it's making the audience part of this show. It's letting them decide. And it's something very generous.
Absolutely. And, before we wrap things up, I do just briefly have to mention Sense8, which was such a great, refreshing, groundbreaking series on which you played a character who could not be more different from Javi. Just briefly reflect on playing Hernando and how much of him you still carry within you today.
Well, Hernando, he's a very sensible person. And Lana Wachowski and this project allowed me to understand many other things that I am a person that is still in the process of deconstructing and learning while I am still here in this physical life. And it was one of the most beautiful, amazing experiences. And working with Lana, with James McTeague, with Lily, sharing set with them three, it was incredible. Just seeing them work, collaborate as a team, putting the ego aside. And I talked with Lana not so long ago, and I wrote her congratulating for Matrix. And she knows this industry in a very precise way, and she knows the industry and dissects the goodness in this industry, and she tries to portray and to share this. And that is something that I would like to learn a bit more about her generosity, about her lack of ego on set, and her as a human being. And in my opinion, I think that the voice, there are many, many voices, but Hernando, he's very eloquent. And at some point, I think that many things that Hernando said are the things that Lana think about life. And I just had like
goosebumps.
And I was very lucky. I was very lucky.
Yeah, I mean, I really missed the show. It was such a great show. It was very groundbreaking, and there was nothing like it. So yeah, I really do miss it. And, you know, I think the characters of Ozark could really have used an Hernando in their lives. But
yeah, just to let them relax and focus on the good things in life. I mean, money is a good thing, but it's not the most important thing, even though we live in an environment that cherish money. But it is what it is. It is an energy that exists, and we need to coexist with that energy in an intelligent way.
Absolutely. And, you know, that's a perfect note to end on. Alfonso, thank you so much for talking to me today. It was such a pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you very much, Luca. Amazing conversation. I really loved it.
Thank you.